Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Today is October 9th, and we're here for the general session of the South Kingstown Town Council. If we could ask everybody to please stand and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dale?
Council President Healy.
Here.
Council Vice President Collins.
Here.
Councilman DeCruz.
Here.
Councilwoman Gledhill.
Here.
Councilman Veely.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. Item number 4, could I please have a motion to approve A and B, the work session and the regular session of September 24th?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 5, a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Actually, I will second that, but I need to remove an item from the consent agenda. Item number 6C, the Green Line Apothecary. Anyone?
Okay.
You seconded it.
Yeah, so I'm just waiting for...
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to...
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Somebody needs to pull that Green Line Apothecary out.
Okay, let's go to 6C on the consent agenda and have a motion to remove the Green Line Apothecary.
Motion to approve it now, I think, is where you're at, because we already removed it.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
I recused myself.
Okay. Item number 7A, which brings us to a public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the Police Department standing orders relative to fitness for duty evaluation, weapons, caliber and ammunition safety, and cell block holding facility. And this is shown on Exhibit 1.
Good evening. Joe Jaber, Chief of Police. These are 3 more standing orders which we'd like to get approved by the Town Council. They involve the fitness for duty, the caliber and ammunition and firearms, and the cell block holding policy. All of these policies are abide by national standards. The only thing that we have to do is to fit those to our police departments. They're the same policies used across the nation and across the state. We do adjust them depending on the size of your police department and the different departments in your police department. So pretty much everything is standard. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'd be happy to answer.
Chief, will this get us closer to the accreditation that we're seeking?
Yes, this is for accreditation.
Great.
Any other questions?
Has the union weighed in on these changes? These are pretty typical standards.
Yes, the union takes part in these. Everyone in the police department reviews these policies before we finalize them and then present them to the Town Council.
And this is done on an annual basis, correct? These are...
They are amended on an annual basis, depending on what policy it is. Some are 2 years, 3 years, some are every year, because the case law changes frequently on some of the policies. Yes.
Motion to close the public hearing. Oh, well.
Does anybody from the audience want to come up to speak to this first? No? And we do need a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. To item 7A, do we have a motion for item 7A?
Do we have to approve 7?
Yeah, motion to approve item 7A is presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions or recusals? Seeing none, motion carries. Brings us to our second public hearing, 7B, This is a public hearing to consider the proposed amendments to the Town Code, Chapter 17, Taxation, Article 1. In general, that would add new Section 1718, entitled Tax Exemption on Vehicles Adapted for Persons Who Are Disabled. And again, this is shown on Exhibit 2. Gene?
Good evening. I'm Gene Bouchard, the Town Assessor. Per enabling state statute 443413, the town can adopt an ordinance on specially adapted motor vehicles, which would exempt 50% of the value of any motor vehicle where the vehicle has been specially adapted to the specific needs of a person with a disability. Special adaptions include wheelchair lifts, wheelchair ramps, steering devices, power-assisted controls, raised tops or dropped floors, and alternative signaling devices. The exemption can only apply to not more than one motor vehicle owned and registered for personal or non-commercial use. In addition, the special adaptions must meet or exceed 7% of the value of the motor vehicle, so we would need to see an invoice to confirm that. Also, first-time applications must be submitted by June 7th each year. You only have to apply once, but it has to be done by June 7th of the year that you're going to receive the exemption. That's basically the proposed ordinance. If the council agrees, I would ask the council to approve the proposed ordinance.
I know we talked about this in the work session, and you said that you're going to post it on the website if this gets approved tonight and try and communicate the message that this is available to people. If we could also maybe put it on social media too, whoever does our Facebook page, to make sure. I mean, it's hard to tell people, that might not know to ask if they are qualified for this or if they get it. But it sounds like it's a step in the right direction, and just seems like common sense to me that we would do this.
Anybody from the audience like to come to speak, please?
Yes, well, based on what Jean said, I guess I don't have to say too much. I think most of you know that I have a sister who has MS. Meg knows her. And Liz, I know you've been a proponent for people with disabilities. She has a handicap van. She is able to get around because of this. And this would be a tremendous help. She lives at Peacedale Estates. But this is a town also that has taken into consideration not only the disabled, but the elderly. I volunteer at the senior center. Youth, we have the new recreation center. I think it's a community we can be proud of because it does serve the needs of the community. So I would like to see this adopted. It looks like it will be adopted. And I thank you on behalf of all people with disabilities. Thank you.
Leslie. Anybody else care to speak?
Make a motion we close the public hearing?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to approve item 7B?
I'll make a motion to approve item 7B.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, recusals? Motion carries. Moving on to item 8A is a resolution adopted August 21st of this year by the East Providence City Council seeking legislation to amend the provisions of RIGL 44-5 levy and assessment of local taxes regarding taxpayer appeals of assessments based on property revaluations. It is received and placed on file, and we further direct.
Make a motion that we put item 8A on file?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item number 9 is the time. This is comments from interested citizens. If anybody would like to come up to the podium and state your name, we'd love to hear from you. Any questions, comments? Now's the time. If anybody would like to come up to the podium, come on up.
Question regarding what you just had. If a person, what do I do, Dale? Do I just go to the town hall and get my sister's registration and everything so I can get an application for her to be exempt? Or how does that work?
The applications will be coming out of
All right, Jean.
June.
All right, so what would I need? Her registration, her license? Oh,
It's-
talking to you then.
Some-
We have to verify ownership, so you'd need the registration. Other than that, you just fill out the application. It's pretty simple.
And probably some documentation of the value of the
Excuse me.
improvement to the
That-
car. as
Which
well.
is on the application, but the invoice could confirm that it meets the 7% criteria, which is not a very difficult threshold. It's expensive equipment that's going in there, so. Yeah, my understanding it's easily obtained, the 7%.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jean. Do we have any other comments? Anything here at the table? I'll just say I know it was a very busy weekend around town. There were a lot of activities going on between the URI football game and Oktoberfest, and to those that were involved with the Oktoberfest, hats off. What an outstanding event that brought a lot of people in the community together. I know it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of effort. But obviously, hard work and effort really pays off because there was an outpouring and a lot of people in the community who spent their day Saturday here. Anything else? Okay, moving on to item 11, Town Manager's Report.
The manager's report this week is less red than usual, but those reds are sort of significant reds. I would draw the council's attention to the red box in the senior center. We had a bit of a scare over at the senior center recently. There was a gas leak at the center, and the building had to be evacuated for a couple of hours while National Grid went in and found the leak, tested the entire system, and at this point, we've got an absolutely clean bill of health, and they went around the perimeter of the building sniffing for any exterior leaks. They found the 2 leaks that were in the building, and they've been resolved. But it did give us a scare, and given the recent event up in Massachusetts, it was really just not a fun occurrence over there. Staff handled it very well. National Grid and the fire department, everybody responded appropriately, and there was no trampling, there was no rush for the door. In fact, I think folks were very comfortable with the fact that everyone who did responded professionally and appropriately. We do have a bit of an issue over at the animal shelter. We had a contract to do some work, restoration work at the animal shelter. When we took the facade off the building, the damage to the underlying structure was more extreme than we anticipated, and there's a dispute with the contractor who had won the bid on that contract. That is being resolved. I'm not too alarmed about it, but it is worth noting that there is a current contract dispute. One issue that the lower left-hand red box, one issue that comes up pretty much every year, I understand, about this time of year, is the regrading of private roads. Traditionally, the Public Services Department has regraded private roads, a number of private roads throughout town, in the spring, and that's sort of the full extent of our capacity to help with the private roads. But after summer use and as we come into the winter, there's often a demand or a request and the need for additional regrading. And it just isn't something that we have had the capacity to do twice a year. It would take from the general program for public roads if we were to try to do more with the private roads. But we're into the season where the use over the summer has again sort of gotten those roads to the point where we're seeing those requests again. And it's frustrating, it's disappointing to us that we can't be of more assistance on private roads, but they are in fact private roads, and our resources have to be committed to the public roads first. With regard to the public roads, you'll note that in the middle of John's boxes, in the budget category, we are also seeing an increase in the price of asphalt this year, which is throwing a little bit of a wrench in the works for the public road program. I think John's got a handle on this, and I think we can work our way through it, but it may mean less pavement goes down than we'd like to see this year. Other than that, what do we got for really good news this week? We had a couple of good stories, a great story in the Independent about the EMS service. The Parks and Recreation Department got a lot of good press on the softball league.
And I heard their Ninja Warrior course this Saturday was a big hit, too.
Ninja Warriors?
Yes, they had a whole big course set up over in the field at Saugatucket Park, and it was, I had lots of kids tell me how awesome it was.
My kids are now Ninja Warriors.
Oh. Are you one too, Abel? Did you run through it?
I did not actually complete the course.
And then I will note that the Department of Health has scheduled a debriefing on the Suez water response. Suez Water did go public, as everyone's read the newspaper last week, with their determination that they are not liable for any damages that businesses or residents may have suffered as a result of the unavailability of drinking water. I did send a letter off to the State Public Utilities Commission asking them whether they had determined, as Suez has itself determined, that the incident that caused the unavailability of water was an emergency beyond Suez's control. I've not yet heard back from the Public Utility Commission on that, but in my mind there is an open question. What caused the incident? Was this something truly beyond Suez's control? We'll see if the PUC has come to that determination. Hopefully they'll respond to that letter fairly quickly.
Yeah, Rob, I appreciated that you responded that way and sent that letter off. I know that the PUC typically they're a little difficult to deal with and don't always go in favor of the consumer. But I also think just the explanation that Suez gave, it almost seems like it's beneficial to them to determine that they can't find the cause of whatever it was so that they're not liable. So I'm interested to understand the process of who sort of polices them to say, like, did you just, I mean, I know the Department of Health looks over their due diligence report, but it also, I mean, they don't want to identify what happened, because if they do, then they might be liable for it. So it just seemed like it was a catch-22 where it's like, well, you're the only one that's going to benefit from this.
Right.
So it was just frustrating.
Yeah, I will wait for the Commission's response to the letter. We can, and I've asked those same questions, what was the basis for your determination that this was beyond your control? I've asked that question of Suez as well. They haven't gotten back to me to say this is why we say it's beyond our control. They also haven't explained why they saw this as an emergency that precipitated the event. Right. At some point, these sorts of disputes, either it's put up or shut up. To be honest with you, the exposure that the community had, that the town had, was fairly limited. We've got minimal. Some overtime, some water purchases. We did not. The incident did not cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. It didn't cost us, a mortgage payment on a business, and we're not in a good position to sort of resolve the dispute between private parties and Suez. So we're in sort of a difficult spot on that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the town does bear some, I wouldn't say responsibility, but because we're in the place that we are to advocate on behalf of the businesses in the community that spent thousands of dollars on water or had to close because they couldn't afford to go out and buy water. I just think we're in a position to sort of pressure them, as we have with that letter, to say, like, well, you need a better explanation, then it's just not our fault. Because it didn't maybe cost the town a ton of money, but man, to a small business to have to close for Labor Day weekend, that's a huge hit for them.
Absolutely. And again, if anyone out there has suggestions on how we might apply pressure or get to a better understanding of the basis for Suez's decision, I'm all ears.
Right. Thank you.
But DOH, the Department of Health, has scheduled a debriefing on more the communications aspect of it. How did the communications from the Department of Health sort of help or hinder the response in the communities? I've spoken to the Department of Health's director and suggested that one of the things that would be beneficial is coming up with some sort of heads-up approach if we're going to be looking at a boiled water on, a critical date like 4:30 on the Friday before one of the busiest weekends of the year. A heads up would have been nice. It would have been nice to be able to say to businesses 2 days prior, look, the water's fine. We've had a positive test. Be aware that if 2 days from now a result comes in showing a second positive, we will issue a boil water order. Something like a National Weather Service warning as opposed to a National Weather Service, or a watch as opposed to a warning, I guess.
I think that would also be helpful for the really vulnerable populations that are affected health-wise by that. Like a couple of people reached out to me who've had organ transplants where, contaminated water could land them in the hospital very quickly. And they talked about there's got to be a better way to let them know because, if they had known there was even the possibility of contamination, they would have stopped drinking the water right away. And I mean, we know that nobody got sick and that didn't end up being a problem, but for them, that's a precaution that they would absolutely have to take. So is that debriefing open to the public?
I don't know, but we can certainly find out.
Yeah, if you can just let me know the details of that, because I'm sure that I have a few people that would like to give a communication on that.
Yep. And again, I think the issue that we're going to focus on is this concept of a watch as opposed to a warning. Before you do an advisory, let's sort of, if it looks like the circumstances warrant it, let's give folks a heads up and let them know something impactful may be coming their way.
Awesome.
The other issue that I think is important in these incidents that, again, I've spoken to the Department of Health about and will emphasize again is I think it's important to sort of think about it in terms of the community response and the community's needs as opposed to the regulated entities' obligations and the regulators' duties. Those are important. I mean, what the Department of Health does is a very important function. They watch and they protect the health of the public. That's an extremely important function. And it's not easy to be the regulator, but the communications on that Friday, in my view, were constrained because it was the regulator and regulated entity relationship that defined those communications. We need to step back and say the community and members of the public really need to be part of the design. We have to think about designing communications around not just the regulation and the regulated or regulatory regime, but also around the needs of the public. And that's my report.
Thank you. 2 questions on your report. Well, more a comment on the clerk's office, the license renewals, the digital ones. I sent you a screenshot of a message that I got about how it was great, that they thought it was going really well, and someone had a great experience in the clerk's office. And a few people chimed in and said, oh, yeah, me too, it was great. So I just think that that's wonderful, and I hope that that makes things more easy for Dale and her office and her staff. And then I just wanted to follow up on the email from Tim over at Middlebridge Road to see if you were able to talk to him or if anything came of that conversation.
So on the issue of the licenses, I think you're right. The experience of users has been great. The experience of staff in Town Hall has been great. But it's been great in large part because Dale and her staff really were very proactive. They did training. They invited licensees in, gave them, a sit-down tutorial on how to use the new system. Very proactive. It was a model for how to do the rollout of a new electronic system. It was really fantastic. Well done. And I don't think it would have been as good an experience for everybody unless they had been that engaged. With regard to Middlebridge, I did have a chance to sit down again with Mr. O'Neill last Friday, Thursday or Friday, and I think we've devised an approach that I'm hoping will yield some good results. My basic message to Mr. O'Neill is we need to figure out how to be advocating for public pedestrian and bicycle safety across South Kingstown. The neighborhood by neighborhood approach, the balkanization of neighborhoods, isn't pitting neighborhood against neighborhood for a little investment for signage here and a little investment for a speed bump there. It's not working very well for us. And I asked him to work with me to help figure out how we can knit together a coalition of concerned citizens around bicycle and pedestrian safety. I think that the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Committee that the council has established is one of the core elements of that coalition. And actually, we're sort of jumping the gun. They're learning about this conversation that I was going to have with them at their next meeting, which I think is on the 16th, if memory serves me correctly. Jim's going to reach out to them as well, and I think that we've got a lot of work to do. I think we've got a place where we can begin to start building a cohesive advocacy forum, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be great if the Bike Ped Committee could identify some, effective means of regulating the speeding, which seems to be a huge complaint across town for many roads, and then we could, sort of target areas that it's the biggest problem.
I will say this, and the chief and John have been dealing with this in South Kingstown for a long time. Mm-hmm. There are really, and this was Tim's expression of the idea, and I think he's exactly right. There is engineering, there is education, and there's enforcement. Those are the three ways that you can deal with speeding. You can either educate people and get them to change their behavior. You can enforce the current speeding by putting an officer out there giving them tickets, or you can engineer your way around the problem by putting in roundabouts or speed bumps or something like that. The enforcement and the engineering solutions are extremely difficult because they're expensive in part. Although I will point out, and I've made this notation to members of the public, members of the public and members of council previously, traffic cameras work. I know they're not popular. I know no one likes speed cameras, but they work. And that enforcement mechanism is an effective deterrent to speeding. The state law, as I understand it, currently allows enforcement by camera in school zones. And if we've got speeding in school zones, I'll tell you, I can't imagine any place where camera enforcement would make more sense or more of a difference. So there are enforcement mechanisms out there that work. But if it's about having a police officer and a vehicle tied up at a particular spot, that means he or she is not available for the work that has to be done elsewhere in the community. So that makes that a difficult one. Engineering solutions are often a double-edged sword. You put speed bumps down and somebody comes barreling down and they bounce off the speed bump and they run into the pedestrian because they've lost control of the vehicle. There's complex elements to all of these solutions. The best of the solutions in some ways is changing behavior by educating people, which is what the sort of feedback signs are designed to do. People aren't really always aware of how fast they're going, and if you flash you're over the speed limit by 30 miles an hour or something, people, oh, wait, and they, take their foot off the gas. What we have found, what numerous studies have found, unfortunately, is that people habituate to those sorts of feedback loops. They stop responding to them after a while. So it's a cat and mouse kind of game. It's not an easy thing to deal with.
And one of the other issues is volume, and that's equally difficult to solve. But volume of traffic on certain roads is just, roads weren't designed for it, and it was a country road at one time where that had a third the volume. So it's equally difficult, but
I will say that one of the most effective things people can do is model the behavior that they want others to follow. If you're speeding in your neighborhood, folks are going to feel comfortable speeding in your neighborhood too. If you're driving at the speed limit, they may shake their fist at you because you're slowing them down, but that makes the difference. Modeling the behavior, driving safely, driving the speed limit, not accepting dangerous behavior by others is really one of the most effective tools we've got. That having been said, there are also a number of things that may help. There are signs that have LED lights around them that flash at you and let you know that there's really a speed limit here. Just things that capture your attention without distracting you. And again, it's a balance all the time, but there may be some things that we can do. Improving just visibility of signs by making sure that there's no vegetation that's grown up around a yield sign or a school crossing sign or something like that. All of those are things that we should be doing. And again, having a cohesive advocacy group that's spotting those problems, identifying them for town staff, and really pushing to make sure that we do it, I think is probably one of the best things we can do at this point.
Since you mentioned vegetation, that reminds me, I also had asked you about that corner in Peacedale that had the overgrowth that a resident was complaining about.
John reached out to the private property owner who is responsible for that vegetation. It's not vegetation that's grown up in the state right-of-way. It's vegetation that's on private property. And I don't know if you've heard back, John. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
It's enough for me.
Let's move on to the town solicitor's report. Okay, thank you. Moving on, let's go to item number 13, the appointments for this evening.
I'll make a resolution to appoint Laura Krikorian to the Building Code Board of Appeals / Minimum Housing Code Board of Appeals.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Nobody? Okay, the motion carries. Do we want to do the other appointments this evening?
There's some reappointments, I think, looks like. James Garfield and Linda Stedman reappointed to the Historic District Commission. I'll make a resolution to that effect.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
And then we have an applicant for the Housing Authority, and Kenneth Bowman wishes to be reappointed. If we could interview both of those folks as soon as possible.
I think in the work session we talked about advertising too. I think it was right before you got here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
But we'll still schedule interview.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll hold off on that one.
Sure.
So that's fine.
That's good to me.
That's
Thanks,
fine.
Dale.
So we're going to hold off then on the appointments for the library board until we get the other applicants interviewed. Moving on to 14D. It's a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Metro USA Fire Protection, located in Pawtucket, for fire alarm, sprinkler, and suppression systems inspection, testing, maintenance, and repairs for a period of 3 years, beginning November 1st of this year, running through October 31st, 2021. And this is described in a memorandum from the facility superintendent to our town manager dated September 28th. And that's titled Award of Bid Fire Alarm, Sprinkler, and Suppression Systems Inspections, Testing, Maintenance, and Repairs. Do we have any questions on this?
Motion to approve 14D.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing motion passes unanimously. E is a resolution authorizing award of bid to Abcor Restoration Company for chimney and bell tower roof cresting repair at the Town Hall in an amount not to exceed $24,000, including a $2,000 contingency. And this is described in a memorandum, again, from the facility superintendent to the town manager on October 1st, entitled Award of Bid Chimney and Bell Tower Roof Cresting Repair.
Motion to approve item 14E.
Second with a comment. I'm familiar with this company, and I've seen a lot of their work, and I'm pleased that this company stepped forward to bid. The work that I've seen them do has much more to do usually or typically with restoration than renovation, and I think on this building especially that's pretty critical. So I'll second with that comment.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, seeing no oppositions, the motion carries. F is a resolution authorizing an award of contract to Smithco Oil, located here on Main Street in Wakefield, for number 2 heating, fuel, and maintenance for the town and school department for a period of November 1st, 2018 through October 31st, 2020, according to the terms and condition has been set forth below, and further authorizing the finance director to negotiate a price cap if determined to be in the best interest of the town, and as further described in a memorandum from the facilities superintendent to the town manager on October 2nd of this year, and that's entitled Number 2 Heating, Fuel, and Maintenance Bid Recommendation.
Motion to approve item 14F.
Second with a comment. I just wanted to say, I know they were the only bidder on the contract, but it's just nice that we can use somebody that's literally right down the road. I know they sometimes have to travel for deliveries and things, and it's just literally could not be closer, so it's great.
Do we have a motion and a second then? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. G is a resolution authorizing the amendment of a contract originally granted on December 11th of 2017 to Dupree Engineering, located in Cranston, for consulting and engineering design services for design of an ADA ramp and our Rhode Island DEM permit modification application in accordance with all specifications from an amount not to exceed $40,585 to an amount not to exceed $48,135, including resident inspection services. And this has been described in a memorandum from the Leisure Services Director to the Town Manager on October 2nd of this year, entitled Recommendation for Contract Amendment for Consulting and Engineering Design Services for South County Commons Bike Spur Project. Terry?
Good evening. Just as a reminder to the council, this particular project is the South County Commons to Broad Rock Playfields Bike Path Connector. It's funded through primarily a $400,000 grant through DEM. We're working with Dupree to modify the design because the original design was based on viewing that path as a shared use path. Because it is an easement, there is some vehicular access for the owner of the property on the private property end to get to the pump station for service of the pump station. As the plan was presented to DEM, DEM advised that they do want to see an ADA accessible ramp with the run and rise required by ADA with the landings, and for that reason we are seeking additional funding for the design of that ramp, as well as permit modification on the wetlands permit, since the ramp will be outside of the limits of disturbance. So we will need a modification on that.
I had a question about the funding on this. Was this where we moved some money around when we did the land trust purchase? Was it the $200,000 that was originally somewhere else that we moved over?
Correct. So I believe it was the unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
In the amount of $200,000 to cover the match for the DEM grant.
Gotcha.
Motion to approve item 14G as presented.
Second, and I do have one more comment. You said the ramp is going to go outside of the area where there's wetlands, where the perimeter is. Are you at all worried about any kind of drainage or flooding issues with where that ramp is?
Deprete Engineering is going to handle the design and the permit modification. They don't anticipate it. It would not have been advised or suggested, the location where they're looking to design the ramp.
Okay.
And it's on a pitch downward, so I don't believe there will be an issue with, runoff or stormwater management at that point. But I'm not the expert, so
Right.
I can't
I trust
guarantee.
that you review everything and you feel comfortable. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to H is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Batcher Incorporation located in Connecticut for a 2018 John Deere 5100M tractor with an Alamo Samurai boom mower in an amount not to exceed $134,904, including a trade-in, and that is further described from a memorandum from this Public Services Director to the Town Manager on October 2nd. Bid recommendation, roadside boom mower. Do we have any questions or a motion?
I figured Joe would know about this tractor.
I love this tractor.
Well, that says it all then. Motion to approve item 14H as presented.
Second, with a comment, I don't have it in front of me. The total bid was $134,904, and the money we set aside was $135,000. That's just amazing to me.
So do we have a motion? Do we see a second?
And we do.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. Moving on to I, a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Bobcat of Rhode Island for the purchase of one compact excavator in accordance with all bid specifications in an amount not to exceed $57,960. Again, this is described in a memorandum from the Leisure Services Director to the Town Manager on September 29th. Bid recommendation for compact excavator.
Motion.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve item 14I.
Second, with,
All those in favor?
I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
We set aside $58,000. The bid was $57,960. I love this machine more.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. At this point, we will move into a closed executive session, right, before anything else. So, okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to move into closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A2 to discuss matters pertaining to litigation strategy regarding outstanding notices of violation for tree removal and noncompliance with trash hauler regulations.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll now move into closed executive session.